Okay, hello everyone. This is a lesson about the Industrial Revolution. So in this lesson today, we are going to be looking at why factories led to the growth of cities. So in our previous lessons, we started to talk about what the Industrial Revolution was, and that this was a period of great change where more people moved from the countryside to the cities, more goods were being made, huge changes in things like technology, for example. So this was a really, really important time in history between the years 1750 and 1900. So the first thing I want you to think about, and you can pause this video at various times, is have a look at this picture, and do you think it shows the city or the countryside? So I'll just give you a bit of time just to think about that. So let's find out the answer to that. So it actually shows a picture from London, and it's a painting from 1852 by William W. Morris. And it actually shows the scene of what's called a milk stall in St James's Park in London. And it reinforces that one of the big challenges that they had during the Industrial Revolution is we started to see a growth of lots of cities during this time. And one of the challenges was to be able to feed everyone in those cities. So they often would have to use parks and more kind of rural areas within cities to have things like cattle, for example. So it's quite common to see cows going through the city streets of London and things like that, and produce being grown in the middle of big cities. So huge, huge challenge. But we're going to focus today in the lesson about what these new factories were and why they led to the growth of cities. And this led to a profound change in the way that people lived during the Industrial Revolution, with people moving from countryside to. So this is what we're going to look at in this lesson. We're going to think about why factories led to the growth of cities. In the last lesson, we looked at what caused the Industrial Revolution and the changes that brought about. So today we're looking at what's called the factory system. And then in our other lesson this week, we're going to look at what life was like in the industrial cities. So you might want to have your exercise book with you, make a few notes if you want to, and then there'll be a little quiz for you to complete at the end of the lesson just to show your learning. So without further ado, let's move on. So in 1750, most things were made at home. So if you were, for example, to buy a product like some buttons or some nails, for example, or a clay pot, then that would normally be bought from somebody who had made those goods within their home, or they might have had a little workshop attached to their home or something like that. And this was known as the domestic system. And what people do is they would make these products and then they would sell them at local markets in towns. And that's why towns, even nowadays, they still have a tradition of markets and they have market days, and people would go to the markets and they would sell their goods. And that's pretty much how things were made, very much locally, not made in factories. Things weren't mass produced in a way that things are now. And you can see here that this shows a typical scene from the domestic system. This shows a picture of a spinning wheel. It appeared in George Walker's book, The Costume of Yorkshire, in 1814. And this shows us the change that we're seeing during the Industrial Revolution, is that goods go from being made within people's homes to being made in these large factories. Now, the thing with these factories is that we start to what we call mass-produce goods during the time of the Industrial Revolution. And this makes goods a lot cheaper. Things can be made much more quickly. Things can be made much more fast. And lots of these goods are being produced. So people start to spend more money on things like that. And one of the big changes that we saw during the Industrial Revolution was lots of cotton mills. And people changed what kind of clothes they were wearing. So rather than wearing things that were sort of mainly woolen based, they went to making things which were more cotton based, which was a lot more comfortable, probably a lot more fashionable as well. Changes we'll be looking at today. Now, one of the things that brought all of this about was the change in inventions. So at the start of the 18th century, we had some new inventions. Now, this man called John Kay, he invented a machine called the flying shuttle, which you can see here. And that helped weavers that were weaving strips of material and putting them together to make things like clothes or other kind of products, allowed them to make those quicker. But this product could still be used within somebody's home in the so-called domestic system. And you can see there's a little bench for them to sit on as well. So that was quite an important change. We'll find out a little bit more about John Kay, actually. He actually came into a little bit of protest. People once protested around his house, protesting at his invention, saying that it put people out of work, and he had to be rolled up in a carpet and actually smuggled out of his home. So there's a nice little story there for you about John Kay. Can you imagine that? Absolutely incredible. even this one, spinning jenny, is pretty large, but it could fit in somebody's home if they had, enough space. These ones definitely couldn't fit in people's homes. So when these inventions were created, it meant that you had to have them in factories. So that's really important. So you've got in 1769 the water frame, which was invented by Richard Arkwright. And that led to Arkwright building one of the first factories at a place called Cromford in Derbyshire, which I've actually been to. Very, very nice place. It's just a few miles down the road from Matlock, Bath. 1784, the mule, invented by Samuel Crompton, and then the power loom was invented in 1786 by Edmund Cartwright. So these machines could only really be paid for by people that owned factories and were used inside factories. So this led to the development of what's called the factory system in England. Now, this is a typical factory during the Industrial Revolution. So you can see here that lots and lots of machines all whirling away. You can see that at the bottom, they're stocking up the goods ready for delivery. You've got, your factory bosses here and the wealthy people. You can see here lots of people working, men, women, children, quite often whole families working. You can see this person here in the top hat. He's what's known as an overseer, so he's the boss. And we'll find out when we look at child labour that children quite often had to crawl under these machines in order to keep them working. And it was a very, very dangerous job. And I don't know if you can see here how this factory is powered, but this one is actually powered by water power. So basically, these factories often built near fast-flowing rivers, and basically the water would run over the water wheel, that would turn the water wheel, and that would create the energy to power the whole mill. And this was very typical at that time, before the invention of steam power kind of meant that the water power wasn't used as much. And before that, of course, in old mills, they had used horses to actually turn these wheels, which gives us obviously the phrase horsepower. But this is water power, and it's very, very effective. And a typical factory that had water power was a place called Quarry Mill in Style in Cheshire. So that's a typical factory during the Industrial Revolution. This is Richard Arkwright. Now, Richard Arkwright became extremely wealthy indeed, the equivalent of, a multi-millionaire in today's terms. And he built a factory to house what were called the water frames or spinning frames that were so heavy that they had to be powered by a horse or a water wheel, and therefore couldn't be used in somebody's home, normally powered by water wheels. And he built his factory at Cromford in Derbyshire, and he's quite an interesting character. So you can see here a picture of Richard Arkwright's factory. And this changed life for people because during the domestic system, people could work whenever they wanted. But now, because Arkwright and other factory owners, they wanted their factories to work for 24 hours a day, they had to create the shift system. And generally, people would work in 12-hour shifts, so that the factory itself was always working 24 hours a day. And that meant that it became really important to be able to keep to time. And so that time and sort of watching the clock became quite important in Victorian times. There was even a job actually during the Industrial Revolution of what was called a knocker-upper, and their job was to wake people up by knocking on people's windows so they could get to work in the factories. It was a bit like, a sort of Victorian alarm clock, if you like. So that's a little bit of information about Richard Arkwright. This also gives you some information about Samuel Gregg, and there's a little video I've put into the PowerPoint which you can watch. This is Quarry Mill, which is the south of Manchester. Very good, actually, for a day out with the family if you ever get the opportunity to go. But he created a cotton mill to the south of Manchester in Cheshire, and they used a river called the River Bollin in order to power this factory. So I want you to have a little read of that source and just think about what you can infer from the source about working in a factory. You could jot down a few notes in your exercise book, so I'll just give you a bit of time to do that, so you can pause the video while you do it. So hopefully you've seen from that source about how there were, some positives about working in factories in terms of the employment and the pay, but you can see here that people very much missed that freedom. So watching a clock and having that boss, that was a huge kind of social change in the Industrial Revolution. So one of the things I want you to think about as we finish this lesson is that the Industrial Revolution led to the growth of lots of new cities in England, or towns that became large places during this time. So places like Manchester, Bradford, Leeds, Sheffield, Stoke, Coventry, Birmingham, Liverpool, Newport, Swansea, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Glasgow, they all became absolutely massive. I mean, Middlesbrough, for example, is a fairly large place, a large town nowadays, but at the start of the 19th century, Middlesbrough was a tiny little hamlet, little village of no more than 25 people. It was actually called Middlesbrough Farm. And this developed massively during the Industrial Revolution because of all the raw materials that are around in the Eston Hills, and obviously because of the River Tees as well. The transport out of there was good. So what I want you to do is just write down an explanation for how these factories led to the growth of cities. And hopefully you can see here from this flowchart that the city could really develop because of the factories. So when the factories are built, they need workers to work in those factories. So the workers come and live near the factories. But of course, they have to live close to the factories because there's not a great deal of transport to actually get them there. And they couldn't afford that transport anyway. So the workers come to the factory, lots of workers all packed into one place, very, very different from the domestic system. So we need workers, and therefore we need houses that are built, and lots of cramped houses get built, which we'll find out about in our next lesson. We have transport into these cities, so we have the development of things like railway lines and more roads. We then need shops and services in those areas, so shops open. So that creates jobs for other people around the factory, so people like builders, carpenters, labourers, engineers, drivers, shopkeepers, craftsmen. And that then creates demand for more houses, more transport, more shops, things like schools and hospitals, because there's more medical care for people during this time, and more schools are opening. And that means there's more jobs for people like builders, labourers, drivers, shopkeepers, cobblers to mend people's shoes, tailors who are actually using the cotton that's made in these factories to actually make clothes and suits and things like that, teachers, nurses, etc. So it creates this whole kind of community where everybody needs to live together, much more closely together in it as well. Which you can click through the PowerPoint, and I'll put a link through our page as well. So thank you very much for listening, and goodbye. Found that information useful. There's a little quiz there.